what would you say are the 3 questions we should ask ourselves every single day that would help us improve our life?
One of the first questions that always comes to my mind is how can I be of service today? How can I be and this is extended from that first question, how can I be an instrument of love, compassion, and kindness? And that's what I count as service in my own definition. And so what I would say to anyone listening is define the words yourself. Because what service means to you, me, may be different to you.
Right.
And so it's important. But for me, it's like, how can I be of service today? And the reason why I love that is, we've talked about this before, when you're wired for service, you're set up, right? We talked about in the last podcast, like service sets you up to feel satisfaction, to build bonds and create connections, and does so much. So being of service is one of the first questions I would ask. The second question I would ask myself is, what do I love about myself? Right? What do I actually love about myself?
That is probably the most powerful question anyone could ask, because most people never learn to love themselves.
Totally.
And we always find the things that we don't love about ourselves, and we fixate on those things. And that's one of the repeating thoughts in our head that keeps us playing small every day.
All the time. And we talk a lot about today self-love and self-care. But I think, a lot of that starts with self-awareness, which we know about, self-knowledge. But self-knowledge creates self-trust. And a lot of it's like learning to trust ourselves. And it's like, if I don't know what I love about myself, how am I ever going to trust myself? How am I going to trust that I have my best interest at heart?
Yeah.
And so asking yourself, what do you love? And then the third and final question I think I would ask myself is who do I want to be? Right? Who is the person that I need to be that I can love, that I want to love, that I want to give more love to? Like, what parts of growth are there still available? And there's one thing I want to add, which isn't a question, but it has been a really reaffirming or deepening affirmation for me that I keep reminding myself, and I think it's helped a lot of people that I've shared it with, is literally some days I'll just put my hand on my heart and I'll just repeat to myself, I'm exactly where I need to be. And
so true.
It's just such a great reminder. Like, if you literally put your hand on your heart and you just go, I am exactly where I need to be, you stop getting lost in the future, you stop worrying about the past, and you realize that everything you need to learn, everything you read right now to make a change, it's all right now, it's all right here. And so that's one of my favorite things to repeat. It's not a question, but
it's more of a mantra saying.
Correct, yeah.
Because I find it so hard for people today who compare themselves to everyone online about not being where they want to be, or not having the career or the relationship or the body or whatever, the following or the attention. A lot of people compare themselves to other people in their space, friends, family, and they don't feel enough. And so when we say to ourselves, I'm exactly where I need to be, does that help us eliminate the feeling of not being enough?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on, because we're always feeling like we either feel like we're ahead, we feel like, I'm doing better than everyone, I'm kind of like winning the game, or more often we feel behind, where we feel like, they just got promoted, they just, they got proposed to, whatever it is. Like, we're always feeling ahead.
They had their first child or whatever.
They had their first child, they bought their first house, whatever it is, and we're always feeling ahead or behind. And so when you say to yourself, I'm exactly where I need to be, you realize you're not ahead or behind. And the problem is, if you always think you're ahead or behind, then you're always comparing yourself to others. Whereas if you're where you need to be, you now just need to get to the next place of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And also, you only get ahead of yourself by first being present with yourself.
And I think it's really hard to say that when you're in a challenging place in your life. I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm broke, my dog died, my girlfriend broke up with me. It's hard to accept that.
Yeah.
And I've been there, I know you've been there. It's really challenging to say, my life is perfect right now, when you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But I think when you can learn to accept timing of life and know that, a mentor of mine early on, when I was broke and I was an intern, working for free for 6 months for someone, I was living on my sister's couch. I remember saying, I would do walks with him every day. And I was like, man, I could really use some money, in my life. I'm just sick of being broke. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, money comes to you when you're ready for it. And I was like, I feel pretty ready right now. I feel like I could have some money.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for it. Mentally, emotionally, my life wasn't set up. I didn't have systems set up in place to really receive the money and be able to do good with it and be able to use it for good in my life and put it to good use. And later, when I started to make money, I realized like, oh, I probably would have blown that money. I would have spent it poorly. I would have made the wrong investments, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear when things aren't going well, but I think trusting the timing of your life. Like if you would have built your empire 7 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been ready for, maybe you would have been, but you wouldn't have been ready, or social media wasn't the right timing for your message to be out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that if I wouldn't have gone to monk school, then I think you can become successful but still feel extremely dissatisfied or misuse the success.
Yes.
And I don't think that that can be blamed on anyone, because no one's ever been taught how to deal with failure or success. There's no class on here's how you deal with failure or here's how you deal with success. But the funny thing is, those are the two most extreme things that we all experience.
And the things we're most afraid of are failure and success.
And success.
So how do we deal with failure? If you could give a mini masterclass right now, what would you suggest to people who are afraid to fail, how to deal with it?
Yeah. I think one of my first things in failure is don't take it more personally than it actually is. And I'll give an example of that. When I was applying to 40 companies that all rejected me before an interview, all I was getting was an automated response saying your application will not go any further. I can't take that personally because they didn't meet me in person. They didn't have a interaction with me. They just saw my name. They saw I'd been a monk for 3 years. That resume is useless. I mean, what's your transferable skills? Like sitting in silence and stillness. Surprise, surprise, no one wants to hire a monk. And so they rejected you, but that's not personal because they didn't meet me in person.
But what if they had met you?
Right, so that's the first step. The first step is don't take all failure. I'll give you an example. Me and you, we reach out to countless guests to be on our podcast.
Who say no all the time.
Who say no all the time. But if I don't hear a no from the guest directly, that's not a no. Like someone's team can say no, someone's assistant can say no, someone's PR team can say no, but until they say no personally, it's not a no.
Okay, but when they do say no,
then that's a no. Yeah, so then let's move to that.
So how do you deal with that type of failure?
Yes, so if I deal with a failure where someone meets me in person and gets to know me.
No, Jay, you're horrible, you suck, like I don't want to deal with a monk ever in my life. I would never go on your show, I'm never listening to you, never. Then how do you deal with that type of
So
failure?
I've heard you say this, I've said it a couple of times, and I'm sure it's been repeated a bunch of times around how I genuinely believe failure has feedback.
It's feedback,
and so for me, it's like failure has the ability to actually tell you what you need to improve. Now, not to improve to get their attention, improving to get the actions that you want to take.
Yeah, the results you want.
The results you want. And don't make that result about the person who said no. Don't try use failure as a way to prove someone else wrong.
Because what happens when we prove others wrong?
When you prove others wrong, you end up trying to get validation and approval for them. And now if they're not impressed when you're right, you lose again. So you end up losing twice.
And you spend all this time and energy, years maybe, to prove someone wrong. I've been there many times. And then you're like, I felt good for a moment, and then I feel empty again.
Totally. And so that's the thing about failure in the second half is you have to see failure as an improvement. If I'm completely honest, everyone who rejected me in my life up until now has made me more hungry, taught me so much more about myself, and made me up my game. And I think if failure doesn't make you up your game, it's the same as losing in a sport. Right? When you fail and you've lost games and you've won games, you know, on the big stages.
You didn't have the skills, you didn't have the teamwork, you guys weren't hungry enough,
you
whatever
weren't communicating enough.
There's something you were missing. So you go review the game film, you check the stats, you see what could I have done better, and you try to improve that for the next game. And I think a lot of people can do that in life, but we're so afraid to like go on the next game of life. Like I got rejected once and it hurts so bad. How do people learn to overcome that pain of rejection? To keep going. You know, in sports, luckily there's a season, which is like you might have 30 basketball games. After you lose the first two, you don't say, I'm just going to give up the rest of the season. You keep playing. But in life, a lot of people stop playing. Why?
I think that's great mental training too. I think sports is great mental training because you have to show up to the next game even if you lost and you don't feel bad. That you don't feel good, sorry. You're saying, why do we feel that pain in rejection and how do we deal with that? I think we feel that pain because we look at a failure, right? We look at it as a complete definition of us, right? We're looking at it as there's that famous statement of like, you know, failure is an event, not a person. Whereas we start thinking we are the failure. Like we say, I am a failure. Exactly. Here are 3 signs you're struggling with a lack of purpose. Number 1, you feel pressure to know what you want to do with your life. Number 2, you've lost interest in your own life and feel disconnected. Number 3, you don't know what your skills are or you feel you lack them. Hope is not lost. You can get through this. Having purpose and meaning in our lives helps guide us through the ups and downs and create structure in our day-to-day life. That's why I've partnered with Calm, the leading app for mental health and wellness. The app has a library with thousands of meditations, songs to help you relax and focus, and sleep stories to help you get a good night's rest. And now you can find the Daily J, a daily series where I'm sharing proven tools and techniques to improve your mindset and mental health in a matter of minutes.